Make the ground shake.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Game Hub. I'm your host Gamer K, and it's finally time for the final video of the month of April. And I honestly can't wait because I'm really looking forward to the videos in May. And I thought, what better way to end it with a good DLC review. And finally, this is the DLC review that brings us to the end of talking about Assassin's Creed Origins. Unless I do another topic video where it's mentioned. And obviously I've got my Assassin's Creed Syndicate shirt on in order to end it. Origins did a lot of things right. It was one of those games where it didn't need to be as great as it was because it was following the other series. But Origins did such a fantastic job. And it leaked into the DLCs too. The Hidden Ones developed a great story of the well, not the birth of the Hidden Ones or the Assassins, but basically their creed as to see the dangers of bringing innocent people involved, and it worked. And this one brought to life a good I think one of the first mythical DLCs to be done, because Syndicate had the Jack the Ripper, Unity had the King of France, the Dead Kings of France, 3 had Washington of the What If Washington Went Crazy, and Black Flags had a mini game with Adewale, which really should have been a full game. But for the final one of Origins, we go deep into the dark recesses of Egyptian mythology and lore in order to discover the curse of the Pharaohs. And now there's going to be a little bit of spoilers in this because obviously, you know, I'm talking about the DLC, so I got to do the spoilers. So basically, this came out a good while after Origins came out, basically around the same time the second one came out, or the first DLC came out, but maybe a little bit later. I'm not 100% sure when. And this is a DLC done right. Instead of it, the same way as all the previous DLCs from Unity to Syndicate to now have done. So, 4 years have happened since the end of the main game. And so 4 years after that, so a good maybe couple years after the events of the first DLC, the Hidden Ones. This one brings Bayek being asked to come to Thebes, not Greece Thebes, but basically a place in Egypt where it was called Thebes, also called the Valley of the Kings, where to investigate strange phenomenon that's been happening. Tomb raiders have been killed, and once we get there, the spirits of the Duat come to life, well, rise from the dead and become phantom enemies to fight throughout the game when you are in Thebes and the Valley of Kings. Now, much like the last one, this one does have, I wouldn't say a paywall, because this is where Assassin's Creed has kind of evolved. There's no invisible walls that prevent you from going into an area, you know, until you reach a certain section, but it does have a level difficulty where you can go there. It's just you better be at good level, and this is the highest level. We're around level 50, level 55 is the max for this DLC. So after that, we discover from a smuggler, from a gambler, and from a redheaded, I don't know what they did with him, something different. I'm not 100% sure about that. But turns out that the Pharaohs are angry. So we go in to discover more. And let's see, ancient stuff is happening. In an Assassin's Creed game, what could be? Yeah, it's a piece of Eden. Big, big shock. Once again, a piece of Eden is used, and it is the sphere, much like the one Flavius used in the main game, and like all the ones that we've been finding throughout the Assassin's Creed series. Seriously, is there a counter that I need to put in the corner here for the amount of orbs that we find? This DLC really works with Bayek's story, and also showing how these mythical objects can be misused. Obviously, there's a main story to be going within the real world in this level, but then as we get to the Valley of the Kings, there are 4 tombs in this game where we'll find one of them in a main mission where we go into the 4 areas of the afterlife in Egypt mythology, and each one has their own theme, and honestly, I really enjoy it because it adds a little bit of diversity, and you can and there are side missions within the afterlife too. 4 of the side missions, I'm going to get right to it, one of them is in each of the afterlife levels. Love or duty, gods or creed, follower or leader, and shield or blade. And these missions take a lot of kind of like what Assassin's Creed Tyranny of King Washington did, kind of messing with the mind of Connor of, what American history would be like if things were worse. It kind of shows Bayek a little bit more about himself, between the love of his wife and his family, or the duty of the creed. To believe in the gods that he's believed in, or to believe in his own creed. To be a follower like he was when Cleopatra was running the show, or to be a leader for the hidden ones. To be a shield for the people, or a blade for the people. This is one thing that I really love about these side missions in Origins, and also in Valhalla as well. All the side missions collectively create its own story, and sometimes makes the player character who you are kind of think about himself a little bit. And I do enjoy it. And through the game, we will meet the High Priestess of the Pharaohs, Isadora, who warns us that the artifact has been stolen by tomb raiders and such. So we constantly have to go into these afterlives, and throughout the main mission, within switching between the afterlife and the real life in order to complete these missions and discover the little secret. One thing I really do like about this is that we aren't dealing with an Order of Ancients members. I really, really enjoy that we didn't have to do that. Because, yeah, going throughout the main game doing that is great. Doing the first DLC to have more Orders of Ancients, I mean, it's only 4, but it still counts. I did enjoy it, but it's good to just kick back and do kind of like in the Bonfires of the Vanities of Assassin's Creed 2, that DLC, where we deal with a guy with Savonarola who found the piece of Eden and decided to use it to return Venice to the Dark Ages, destroying every sort of progress and manipulating his henchmen in order to help him. Something a little bit like that in a little bit of Assassin's Creed DLCs will flesh out the story and not make everything about, the Assassins versus the Order of Ancients, and so on and so on. One thing now I'm getting into the afterlife areas, and as much as I love the main game and the beauty of the desert and all the cities in the desert and all the towns, these are some of the greatest supernatural levels I've ever dived into a video game. And this is before Assassin's Creed Odyssey with the Atlantis DLC and with whatever Valhalla is going to give us. And these are beautifully done. We've got Ara, which is the fields, the field of reeds, which is like a wheat field kind of. And there's boats driving in the wheat fields. And I really love it. It's the first area you go into. Then we've got Aten, which is basically it's basically like Venice. There's a bunch of water, underwater caves, and a whole city on top of it with pillars shining over a giant sphere over the city, which honestly is very, very cool. If you're a photo nut and you like taking pictures throughout the game, these levels are definitely good to get good photos and make artistic changes to them. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing these words right. Hebsed, which is the desert and canyon. And just walking into this, because you go through the tomb, the gate, and then you go through the afterlife, which is all dark. And then once you get to the level, it shows on the grand scale. And the canyon level is amazing. It's full desert, full with a lot of forts around where the enemies keep prisoners of war. And the canyon, you can just tell they went through so much detail to make this really epic. And the desert and the canyon, it all works. There's high-rise canyon mountains and a big mountain in the center with a whole bunch of a battlefield in the desert kind of look with dead warriors and a big throne in one area, because I'm going to get to that later. And then we got the Duat, which is like dark with a big temple and a little town in the area, but there's a giant snake skeleton. There's a giant skeleton. It just fits so well, and every side mission works too, because we're helping these people go into the afterlife, and then we go back into the real world and deal with the stuff there and all the different side missions there. So, at most, incorporating the entire because the Curse of the Pharaohs is one whole mission, just split into different parts, and there's also the main missions within the game, the DLC, that adds to the Curse of the Pharaohs and also adds to its own. So there's 9 main missions throughout the game and throughout the DLC, including the whole Curse of the Pharaohs entire plotline. And I double checked. Between the afterlife levels and in Thebes and the Valley of the Kings, there is a total of 18 side missions. So kudos to them for making, again, this is what new Assassin's Creed games have been doing so well. Making big side missions that aren't over in 2 seconds. except for Odyssey. Sorry, sore throat. But yeah, they've been making a lot more bigger and vaster side missions in order to enjoy. So it feels like you're not just playing the same missions over again. The stories are well written, and that's why I can't wait for the next DLC to see what they do. So in this game, it is revealed later on, like after we defeat the bosses, which are basically the forgotten pharaohs, and there is one each in each of the afterlives, and their fighting styles, oh man, each fighting style is so cool. One uses a long blade, one uses scorpion-like daggers, one uses like a giant hammer in the desert, one obviously because the desert has to have a hammer, and then the final one uses this big scepter of some sort, and once you defeat them, you do get their weapon, which I honestly love. It's so cool. But in order to defeat them first, you need to do the side missions first within the afterlife area, which I really like. It's not like we can just progress and just finish the bosses. And the boss fights, there's 4, 1 in each, and the boss fights. If I were ever to do like a big DLC boss list in every game I've ever played, these guys would be somewhat on the list as a whole, because they have different fighting styles, they have different weapons, they've got a different atmosphere about them, and once you defeat them, you get a little bit of the story of the Forgotten Kings, which I really enjoy. It is later believed that the Piece of Eden was passed down to the priests by the kings and they were told to protect it. Isidora's mother, if I could have one complaint about this DLC, is I love the side missions and the story to go with it, but the whole motivation is just a little, I don't want to say lacking, because there's plenty, but it's hard to really connect it all in everything. So she used the Piece of Eden. Isidora was behind it all because her mother died from grave robbers, and she decided to use the kings to seek revenge on the tomb raiders, the grave robbers, the thieves that killed her mother. I'm still not 100% on that. It is something that is needed to be fleshed out a little bit more, and not just speculated. I mean, it is shown what happened, but it's more speculated than actual facts, because the way she talks, it's kind of, again, it's in the middle of what actually happened and what she's getting revenge on. Unfortunately, her rising the dead also affects all the innocent people, and we can't let that happen. And I do like how she is, once we kill the final boss, she is the one that dies, and she's given her own gray area to show that the gods didn't give her, because throughout the game's missions, she believes that we were brought to her in order to kill all these bandits and everything, which she thought was Amun or one of the gods looking down on her. But once she fails, she thinks that the god has forsaken her, because why give her this power if you expected her to fail? And Bayek retorts, and this is one reason why I love Bayek, because he is wise, and he's a great character, and he's also wise in his words, even to his enemies half the time. And he tells her that the gods didn't give you this power. They gave you a choice. And clearly you picked the wrong choice, seeing as since you failed. And he does give her final piece, and afterwards giving the piece of Eden to that red-headed dude that appears in the beginning of the game and later in the main missions, it tells us to hide it. Doesn't go so well, because once we complete the game, in a certain area in the game, in the desert area, you will find a small oasis surrounded by cobras, and his dead body will be there, and the piece of Eden is not there. So one can only speculate where it went. One thing and again, despite my comment about the whole motivation behind this DLC, it feels lacking at points, but looking about how well they did the afterlife levels, the missions, the side missions, the boss fights in general, and also to not have any Order of Ancient members be associated with this DLC, really makes me feel like Curse of the Pharaohs was one of the few big DLCs that kept me going throughout. And also all the little trophies that they did as well to keep you going. Also having Anubis guards in the afterlife in order to fight. And once you defeat them, they're destroyed, which I really, really enjoyed. And also fighting the giant scorpion circuits. And also there's going to be a bigger circuit in order to kill in each area in order to get an achievement. And honestly, killing giant scorpions as a Scorpio, I like it. It was enjoyable. So going forward, the DLC is at most main mission 9 hours to complete, which all honesty for a DLC, that's not that bad, especially since you didn't have to wait for 2 episodes to be downloaded later. And for completionists, the DLC is about 16 hours to complete the story, all the side stuff, the collectibles, and trophies as well. 4 bosses, and I know I griped in my Miles Morales review that 4 bosses and 2 of them being the same is kind of weak. But considering that was a full-priced game that was basically a mid-game, this is a DLC, and it did so well in order to immerse you with this with the story and the lore. And it's something that honestly, I'm hoping the next DLC is worth, and that it ups the ante a little bit more. What? Did I forget something? Oh, I thought I did forget something. Nah. But all in all, this curse was one that I was happy to break, and it was an enjoyable ride. So Gamer K's final verdict for for the Curse of the Pharaohs DLC is an 8 out of 10. It would have been a 9 if they, I don't know. I mean, they did pretty much everything they could to basically end Bayek's story here. I mean, and they did it with not so much of a high note that the game was, but it gives you a little extra sense of who Bayek is and continuing along his story. And I wish they continue it along his story, but, you know, you can't pick and choose your battles, and I'm just happy that the DLC here was fantastic. So is it worth buying? Yes. If you haven't played Origins, do so. If you haven't played this DLC, I'm pretty sure after like 3 years, the price has gone down a lot. So definitely download it. Definitely play it. It's something that really needs to be experienced, and it's a heck of a lot of fun. So thank you for joining me in this video, ladies and gentlemen. Like, comment, subscribe down below. And that is it for this month. And it was a good month. But now we go into the month of May, where we start things off with a Funko figurine that has a lot of steel guts. And it just goes to show you that the tough characters can always have a heart of gold. This is Gamer K, logging out.